orders in March 2020. And then shortly after that, in May 2020, we saw the unfortunate killing of George Floyd. And so what happened post George Floyd is many companies and organizations issued, public statements, press releases, updated policies, etc., about their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and ensuring that everyone felt fairly and equitably treated. And there many companies, especially large companies, were committing dollars to, organizations like the NAACP, the Urban Leagues of the world, and other, civil rights and social service organizations. And even internally, many companies made commitments to hire, DEI professionals and executives and in management. Jump ahead 3 years later, it was 2023. Yes, 3+ years later, with the recent decision of the United States Supreme Court reversing affirmative action in higher education, we're now seeing that decision trickle down into the private sector and in the workplace.
You are now tuned in.
You are now tuned in to Let's Talk About Healing.
I recognize that I wanted to come out of that deep, dark place I was in.
Like the story that we are repeating over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
We can change it.
Yeah.
I went in with an open mind, an open heart, and I said, you know what? I'm willing to learn the truth about all of this because I don't understand.
Now here's your host, Yvonne Pierre.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About Healing, where I have interesting conversations with various guests on a variety of topics on healing the mind, body, and spirit. I'm your host, Yvonne Pierre. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with my guest, Angela Reddock-Wright, a leading employment attorney turned mediator and conflict resolution specialist based in Los Angeles, California. Angela has been named a best lawyer in America and top California attorney, among other accolades. She is the author of the book, The Workplace Transformed: 7 Critical Lessons from the Global Pandemic, and the host of the weekly radio show Legal Lens with Angela Reddock-Wright on Tavis Smiley's KBLA Talk 1580. Angela's professional mission and passion in life is to help employers and employees create great, thriving, and healthy workplaces. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to participate and to join you.
Yes, this is going to be an interesting conversation. But before we get started, I wanted to congratulate you on everything.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't take any moments or opportunities. Well, I try not to, I'll say, for granted. And, just really try to just be grateful and appreciative for all the opportunities that we have. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a big accomplishment, not to just enter into the field, but to be recognized as being a top attorney is a awesome. And to be an African-American woman or Black woman, to be recognized in that field is a huge accomplishment.
Yes. And I appreciate that. And I did a show recently talking about, actually with someone else who's she's a lawyer and she does podcasts and other interviews and so forth. And she's very passionate about women in the law and encouraging women to, progress in the law. And we were talking about just a number of women and women of color in particular entering the field. And while the number of individuals entering the field is actually up and, compared to the last 10 to 20 years or so, that women kind of progressing and making it to the top tiers of the profession, that's more limited, and it's not just in the law, but I'm sure in so many
Yeah.
professions across
Yeah.
the board. So to your point, to kind of be acknowledged and, celebrated for the work that I do and that others do, it truly is an honor. And I don't take it for granted or lightly.
Yeah. And the other thing, I was just curious that there are so many different directions that you could have gone in your law career. What inspired you to focus on the workplace?
Well, honestly, when I was in law school, I thought I was going to be an entertainment
Mhm.
lawyer. I live in Los Angeles. And so, in Los Angeles, there's Hollywood,
Mhm.
and everybody
Mhm.
you meet wants to be a part of Hollywood. So I guess I was a part of that frenzy many years
Yeah.
ago. But my first job out of law school actually was with an employment litigation law firm.
Mm.
And I fell in love with the practice of employment law and workplace law, almost from day one of my first real job as a
Yeah.
lawyer. And I just never looked back, although I had invested a lot of time into hoping to become an entertainment
Yeah.
attorney. It, just, God had a different plan. I was redirected to employment law, and I love it. And I love it because, we all work even if we don't work as employees, we have our own
Mhm.
businesses or have been employees or what have you. And we all, especially in American society, we spend so much time at work and engage with work. And so just to have the opportunity to, work in this area. And now, many years later, I see myself not just as a practitioner of employment law or a mediator in this work, but, as someone who's really hoping to advance the discussion about the American workplace and what it takes for employees and employers to have what I call, healthy and thriving
Yeah.
workplaces. So I'm really passionate about it beyond just, being paid for the
Right.
work that I do now as a mediator, but, really in trying to take the insights that I have from over the years of having, litigated cases and seeing both employees and employers, at their worst moments in terms of engaging with each other, and now mediating these same types of
Mhm.
cases and seeing those same things. And so whenever I have a chance to talk about the workplace from a place of the future and what it should look like and how we should be engaging, that just really excites me.
Yeah. Now, I worked in corporate, specifically in the accounting department, for over 15 years. And I can't think of not one company that there wasn't some type of drama. Some places, of course, worse than others. But from your experience in working with people in the workplace, what is common workplace conflict?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't say that there's one set thing. I mean, depending on the workplace, there could be any number of potential issues. Um, but I think probably the one of the biggest issues is, a lack of communication, direction, and guidance
Mm,
within a company or organization. Well, actually, let me back up. I would say it actually starts with what I call leading from a values based leadership and leading leadership from the top. And what I mean by that is, we walk into any company, although, brick and mortar is starting to fade away in some
yeah.
places, but whether you go on the website or social media sites or walk into a company or organization, the first thing we see often is their mission or value
Yeah.
statements. And most companies and organizations invest a lot into, both in terms of time and money and resources into really developing their mission and value statements and what they stand by and what's important to
Mhm.
them as an organization. And what I see is, companies and organizations will have great statements, but the big question and the telltale sign of how great a company or organization truly is whether they live by their mission and value statements in the work that they do every day. And not just only in terms of the interface with their customers and their clients, but in terms of, how they treat and engage with their employees. And so, a company that doesn't necessarily align with this mission and value statements in terms of its everyday work, we on the customer side or the client side, we might see that, represented in, social media posts about how we engage, how a company's customer service department treated us or what our experience was. We all now go on, if we're, having challenges with the company, we'll go on and Google what others are saying and what the ratings are by others, as it relates to that company or organization. And then what I see on the inside is if that the mission and value statements are aligned in the kind of cases that I mediate every day and the kind of cases that I used to see as a litigator and former workplace investigator. And that comes through in the form of, communications. In the cases I see, you often see a breakdown in communications, especially around performance and expectations. You see a breakdown in what companies may say publicly versus, what happens internally. So a good example of that is, in 2020, we had a intersection of, every possible thing in the world that could happen, with the COVID-19 pandemic and stay-at-home orders in March 2020. And then shortly after that, in May 2020, we saw the unfortunate killing of George Floyd. And so what happened post George Floyd is many companies and organizations issued, public statements, press releases, updated policies, etc., about their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and ensuring that everyone felt fairly and equitably treated. And, there many companies, especially large companies, were committing dollars to, organizations like the NAACP, the Urban Leagues of the world, and other, civil rights and social service organizations. And even internally, many companies made commitments to hire, DEI professionals and executives and in management. Jump ahead 3 years later, it was 2023. Yes, 3 plus years later, with the recent decision of the United States Supreme Court reversing affirmative action in higher education, we're now seeing that decision trickle down into the private sector and in the workplace, where the same challengers to, affirmative action in higher education are now challenging it in the private workplace and in law firms as well. And so, many companies afraid of those decisions. I'll be generous by saying afraid or cautious of, based on those decisions, or, some looking for a way to kind of wiggle out of their prior DEI commitments are, now pulling back. And we see that reflected in the downsizing of their DEI teams or layoffs or terminations of their DEI team members, but pulling back on some of their initiatives and policies around DEI and creating equitable places, in the workplace. And so all of that to say, is the workplace is truly at a transitional time. And, really, companies, organizations are toying with how do we, continue to march forward in terms of what we say are our mission, our values, our principles, balance it against, potential legal risk, but still maintain, our commitments. And so in my work, I see the challenges in those areas come through in the form of lawsuits, come through in the form of, cases that I, formerly would investigate and now mediate. So I see, breakdowns as far as communication, as far as employees saying, you say one thing publicly, you have one thing written on the walls, but you treat us differently in terms of performance and pay and equity and promotion opportunities. Those are some of the common things that I see in the work that I do every day. I know that was a long response.
No, that was Oh, good. Is there any resolution to what's going on about the affirmative action? That if it's trickling into the workplace, do you see that anything can be done to prevent it or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's anything we could do about the organizations that are pushing forward in these legal challenges and, suing private sector companies and law firms and so forth, about their DEI practices and policies. But what I will say is to those companies and law firms that are being sued and challenged, I just wrote an article for our legal community, basically about staying the course and about being the ones, especially for large companies that have the resources, the team of lawyers, et cetera, to challenge these lawsuits and so forth, and just the overall spirit that seems to be traveling throughout our country. Stay the course. You're serving, through your companies, you're serving, customers and clientele who are diverse. American society is changing in terms of its diversity, and 10, 20, 30 years, we won't have a majority. We'll have, a mixture of folks from so many different backgrounds, ethnic and cultural backgrounds and experiences. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that our companies and our organizations reflect that change, that we fight against the systems and the lawsuits and legal challenges that are trying to break that down. And I say, we have a moral duty and obligation to ensure that we are, not turning back the hands of times and going back to, the 50s and before that, and back to the days of enslavement. But that we are moving forward and making sure that we create a society that, is just and fair and equitable and inclusionary. And so my biggest advice is, maybe we can't stop the legal challenges because those who are pursuing it, very much like with reproductive rights, those who are pursuing it are adamant and, will not be changing course. And, obviously feel like they have, certain parts of the political establishment as well as the court system on their side. So I'm not sure we can stop that train, but we can certainly push against it, fight against it, use all of our resources and talent, to push against it and say, this is not the society, this is not the kind of society or world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
So I say, stay the course and stand up.
Ooh,
And stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, who don't have the resources or the capability to stand against issues like this.
It's definitely some work for advocates to really, really push and to prevent all these things that they're trying to do to go back in time. It's mind blowing. That's a whole show by itself. So do you represent the employer or the employee, or do you represent both?
So I don't actually represent clients anymore. So my background, I've been practicing employment law and practicing law generally for about 27 years. For the first 15 years of my career, I was a litigator. So I represented both employers and employees during my litigation practice. And then I went on 12 years ago, opened my own firm, and under that umbrella did workplace and Title IX investigations for many years, meaning I was hired when someone made a complaint of harassment or discrimination. Companies have a duty to respond to those complaints and generally will hire an outside neutral third party to come in and investigate. So I spent, over 10 years conducting investigations of, high level sexual harassment, discrimination claims, and, other types of claims. All while doing that, I was building a mediation practice and went full time as a mediator almost 4 years ago. And so as a mediator, we call ourselves neutrals also. I'm considered neutral. And so I'm hired by both the employee and the employers through their legal counsel generally to come in either before a lawsuit is filed in a case or after a lawsuit has been filed. And then when they reach the stage of wanting to see if they can settle that case, they will hire someone like me to come in as the neutral mediator to help them find, have a meeting of the minds and to get the case settled. So I don't represent anyone anymore. I'm not an advocate. I'm, basically, a facilitator, a guide, a mediator is the formal word, to help guide them to a settlement. And I tend to get hired for, high-end harassment, discrimination cases, the full gamut of employment cases. And so I'm able to use my background and experience as a former litigator, then investigator, to bring insights as to where, the challenges are in the case for either side, as well as the strengths, and use that to get the parties talking and wanting to have resolution.
Yeah. So what are the consequences if it goes unresolved? Because a lot of times, I know in my case, sometimes it goes so far that I'm like, okay, there's no point in resolving this, because if I try to fight this, I'm going to end up getting fired because of the tension or whatever. So I'll just put in my notice and look for a new job. I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do, but but what happens if someone stays, but the issues go unresolved?
Right. So there are a couple of different ways to look at this. So in a situation you described, that possibly is a situation where the employee has not filed a lawsuit or sought legal counsel to help them navigate whatever situation they're having. And you're probably kind of dealing with something internally, whether it be a bad performance review or, microaggressions or, forms of discrimination or harassment in the workplace. And perhaps you've reported it to HR, to your manager, and something's being done or not done. There are mediators out there that do the work that I do, including myself, where we are sometimes contacted to come in and help facilitate situations that may be going on in the workplace, and no lawsuit has been filed. There are no attorneys that are involved. And so certainly, someone like me would come in, bring the parties together, seek to understand what's going on and how I can help get those parties back to working together effectively. The concern that you may have is that you may not even make the complaint to HR or to your manager because there's a fear of retaliation. And so I hear you in that instance. You say, well, rather than make a complaint or see if the company would bring in a third party neutral or mediator like Angela to help us work through the situation, I'll just start looking for another job. And I would say, that's unfortunate, right? That, someone could feel they're in a place that, rather than be heard and have the opportunity to seek solutions to workplace challenges and problems, that they feel their only alternative is to leave. But that's real. We know that happens in the workplace all the time. And that's why I started by saying, my true mission in life, especially when I have a chance to talk to employers, is to really talk about, how do you create environments where people feel comfortable coming forward, feel comfortable saying, this happened. I, feel it was wrong. And I would like to, work through the company's processes to see, if there's a solution or something that can help, restore us back, to a good place. And a lot of, employees don't feel comfortable even talking to HR. I often hear they're like, well, HR works for the company. I don't trust them. HR spreads rumors. HR is only going to retaliate against me. And so that's unfortunate too. HR does, work for the company, but a great HR person, a great HR team, will help employees to know what the policies are, what the practices are, and will help create an environment where, employees feel comfortable coming forward. Now, that also depends on the leadership at the top. I'm a big advocate too for saying to CEOs and C-suite executives that you have to empower your HR team. And one, HR should be a part of the C-suite. So they're helping guide and direct the company and set out a vision with the company that's consistent with great, human resources practices. But whether they are or not, companies should definitely empower their HR teams to not only be there for the company, but to also be there for employees, and to help create an environment that employees feel like they can, come forward, they will be heard, and that they won't be retaliated against if they come forward. So I say that's an unfortunate situation if you or others are feeling that way. And I'm hoping that there are folks out there like myself, who are helping companies to create environments where, employees feel like they can be heard. So that's, and a part of that would be bringing someone in to help, mediate that situation. What I do more often than not is, after an employee has already decided that they want to file a lawsuit or have filed a lawsuit, or they've retained counsel to help them navigate, a situation that they feel was wrong in the workplace. In that situation, the employee generally has already quit or has been fired, or there's been some what we call an adverse employment action already. And so that moment of, fear of retaliation or what have you has already happened, or you've already decided, despite any potential fear of retaliation, I am going to file a lawsuit, or have already filed a lawsuit. So I'm coming in once the relationship has already gone, completely south. And now we're talking, about monetary damages to try to, and other non-monetary damages in many instances as well, to see how we settle that case outside of court. And the benefit of that is, in California for sure, and I don't know about all the other jurisdictions around the country, but our court system is completely backed up. Most cases are not being heard by a jury for, at least 2 to 3 years after filing a lawsuit. And so the obvious benefit of mediating and settling a case, outside of the court system, is you get resolution at that time and in that moment. And no case, even as good as a case is, we never know how juries will look at cases, what they'll decide on cases. So, mediation is about hedging your bets against those risks, and also getting, resolution at that time, and having certainty. Because when we settle a case, it's clear, in exchange for the employee withdrawing their lawsuit or agreeing not to file a lawsuit, that employee will be paid X amount of dollars in settlement. And like I said, perhaps some other non-monetary, negotiated items as well. So you get certainty, you get closure, you are allowed to begin the process of moving forward with your life.
Yeah, I think that conflict resolution is something that we need to learn, whether it's for a job or in our personal lives. Because for jobs that I've had, there's been times that I wasn't, I have to be accountable for my part, that I didn't approach the issue in the best way to resolve it. So it was, like you said, some communication issues on both ends. But we often shift it to the other person. They're the problem, not me. So yeah, I wanted to ask, so what does healthy conflict, because healthy conflict exists. So what's the difference in healthy conflict and destructive conflict?
Well, healthy conflict is where you're able to identify the problem or the challenge. I did, as you said, identify the source of it, which usually involves both sides or all sides taking some responsibility for how you got to this place of potential conflict. Is rarely just one person or the other, right? And then a willingness to either sit down through a formal facilitated or mediated process to work through the issue. Or, many companies, organizations are now training their employees in kind of what I call everyday conflict resolution skills. So using those skills to maybe work with the other person or persons, directly, to see how you might be able to work through that conflict. But oftentimes things are so strained that having someone there, whether it's, formally trained mediator or just someone who's very good at helping guide, facilitator, for example, that's helping to guide conversations, to create a level playing field for folks to work through those issues. So I think that's representative of, healthy conflict, a willingness to be able to own your part of the problem and how we got here, and a willingness to work through it, whether it be formally or informally. Unhealthy conflict is, almost sort of not narcissistic in behavior, in that, the person or persons who recognize the conflict don't own it, don't see themselves in it, see it as the problem of the other person or persons, and then an unwillingness to work through it. And, we see that not only in our workplace relationships, but we see it in our everyday relationships with family, with friends, and so forth. So, I believe that many of the principles that we apply in resolving workplace conflict, really carry over into other areas of our lives as well.
Definitely. Yeah. So how can it be avoided? How can we avoid conflict at work? Now, I have started new jobs in the past where I'm like, I don't want to get into the politics. I don't want to get involved in any drama that's going on here. So I just come, do my job, eat my lunch, go home, do my work and go home. But even with that, people felt like, oh, you don't like us, or you don't, I got, some kickback from staying to myself, and I explained that it didn't have anything to do with them or whatever. Well, it gave me some peace. I was seeing the drama, but I wasn't involved in it. So what are some healthy ways we can avoid conflict at work?
It's a fine balance, right? So having the attitude, as you said, of I'm here for a job, here to work. So definitely making that the priority, but also, but you have a responsibility to your team. If you're going to be in the work environment, not going to be an entrepreneur working on your own, kind of solo scenario, then, there's a duty to be a participatory team member. And, you could choose to participate or engage from a place of drama and adding to the drama and feeding, off the drama. Or you could choose to participate from a place of, what? I see what's going on over here. And I would even say it to folks, I see what's going over here. That's not who I am. I don't want to be a part of that. But what I would encourage is that you all look at it from a different lens, or that we stop the rumors and we stop the gossiping, so kind of, not that it's your responsibility to carry your workplace, but when you have a chance to at least weigh in from a place of a positivity and a place of maturity. I have a friend that's, just joined a new workforce and is facing a similar situation where, they were brought in to do some really positive, groundbreaking type things, and walked into a situation where, one, people don't want to embrace change or look at things from a different lens. The others have been working together for many, many years and have just kind of fallen into this place of mediocrity, for lack of a better word. And so my friend, who's super enthusiastic, excited about the work they've been brought on to do, kind of walked in with this very enthusiastic attitude and is getting a lot of pushback. And also because my friend is a very positive person, folks are approaching the friend on a individual basis and starting to plant ideas and rumors about, well, this person is this, or this person is that. I don't like this person because of that. And so as I was talking to my friend about the situation, my advice was, you know what? You don't want to get caught up in the drama of the situation. You don't want to come across as someone who's open to receiving gossip, to spreading gossip, to accepting it, and are losing your power as the new person there that could be a part of bringing about change there. So I say you always want to be above board. You want to cut it off when it comes to you and say, you know what? that's just not who I am. But let's see how we could work together to focus on this, and deliver for our community. And so I think you gotta, I think to be standoffish can, as you pointed out, can make people think you're not a part of the team, that you're not engaged. And I don't think that's, you got to work every day. So I think at some level, at some point, that might even become tiring, even for the person that said, I'm just going to not engage at all. Right. So I get that, but I think you have to find the fine balance of being the mature person, being the person to bring positivity to a situation, but also making it clear that you're also not the person who's going to entertain or participate in drama.
Yeah. Finding some balance. And knowing and setting boundaries. Healthy boundaries.
Yeah, that's great.
Because like you said, people bringing the drama to you or trying to put you in it or whatever, and you're just there like, okay, if we got a team project, let's focus on the project and not, but
and building each other up as coworkers, because like I said, we spend a lot of time at work, and not that you need to be best friends with your coworkers, but at least have enough of a relationship to be able to get the work done in a good, positive way.
Yeah. So what are some simple steps that people can take to keep it from escalating?
Address it head on when you see things creeping in, or you see, communication breakdowns. Let's say it's coworker to coworker. I would, encourage, if you can, and if you feel like you can have a mature conversation with that coworker, having a conversation with them saying, hey, when this happened, it really challenged me in some ways, and I'd like us to talk about that, right? If it's say with your manager or your supervisor, many managers and supervisors have, time for one-on-one meetings or check-ins. If you have something like that, I would use that as an opportunity to say, when this happened can we talk about something that happened last week? I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding and processing this in the best way, and would love to get your feedback or your thoughts on this situation, right? And try to have a mature conversation with your manager or your supervisor. If it's something such as, harassment or discrimination, or something that really crosses the line of just everyday communications challenges or workplace interactions challenges, but really crosses the line into violation of potential workplace policies or, the law even, then you have to think about whether that's something you should or willing to make a complaint to human resources or through your company or organization's complaint process, or if you even need to seek outside, advice or consultation, with an attorney or legal professional. But in terms of everyday workplace conflict, I think it starts with being able to, address it head on, not let it simmer, not let it boil over to the point where you're like, forget it, I'm just going to find a new job. Unless you just truly is not the place for you for that reason and other reasons, then of course, looking for a place that may be more aligned with your own personal values and what's important to you in a workplace. But if it's salvageable and it's just a moment in time, then I say, take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and try to, create a situation where it can be addressed.
Yeah. So, but before you go, I wanted to find out more about your book and your radio show. So your book, The Workplace Transformed, if you could tell us a little bit about it and what inspired you to write it.
Well, I wrote it in the midst of the height of the COVID pandemic. It's called The Workplace Transformed, seven Crucial Lessons from the Global Pandemic. And I wrote it because it was almost as a personal journey in a way, in that, the pandemic clearly changed our lives and, impacted us forever, right? Although it does seem like we almost have forgotten about it and everybody's just picked up and moved on. But I wanted to write a personal diary, so to speak, or journal of how I feel that the pandemic impacted the workplace and the changes that it brought about in the workplace. Everything from this question of remote work to how do you manage and engage, in the midst of crises. And so for me, it was taking a moment to have a book out there from that time period, from this time period, that gave some thoughtful reflection on that and encourage others, especially workplace leaders and employees alike, to really give some thought to what this moment in time, this 3+ years, what it did to the workplace, what we can learn from that, and how we can build on and prepare for, future pandemics and crises. Unfortunately, the world we live in, we're not immune from, future crises. It's not like, okay, we did that and this will never happen again. We'll see it in some other form at some point. And so how do we take the lessons learned from this time and apply it to the present and to the future? And again, all toward how do we use this moment in time to build good, healthy, thriving workplaces.
And your radio show?
The radio show is a labor of love. A couple of years ago, I got a call from Tavis Smiley, noted media personality and host and interviewer, saying that he had bought the call letters to a relatively well-known radio station in Los Angeles, and that he was starting a 24/7 talk radio station to highlight the voices of African Americans and people of color around legal issues, social issues, and we even have shows that talk about music and art and poetry and books and so forth. So really just to highlight our voices across the spectrum. And he was looking for someone to host a show on legal issues and approached me. And I thought, what a great opportunity to be able to talk about not just employment law, which is, my specialty, but to talk about a broad spectrum of legal issues and to bring some of the top lawyers and policymakers and legislators on the show to help delve into issues that we hear about in the news that impact our lives every day. And so we do various types of shows on literally if you have a criminal lawsuit, you have an employment lawsuit, you have, you're dealing with a workplace investigation, what to expect and how to navigate those issues. So we try to make it practical for our listeners. And then we also talk about, some of the big issues we hear about in the news. So this coming weekend, we'll have one of our members from Congress on to talk about, at this time that we're doing this podcast, we face a government shutdown. In California, our governor just appointed a Black woman, LaFonza Butler, who's the current, just head of Planned Parenthood nationally, as our senator to replace Dianne Feinstein, long-term serving senator for the state of California. And then just to talk about, getting things done in Congress. So, we're going to have that person on this weekend to talk about that so folks can hear from someone who's on the ground in Congress, giving us an eyewitness report as to what's happening and the impact in our lives. So, we try to, on our show, cover, both legal and policy issues that hopefully resonate with people and help them to navigate their everyday lives.
So good. So good. I've actually tuned in. Really great show. And
thank you. I really appreciate you for following us and listening.
And so how do people tune in?
They can tune in through our KBLA app, Talk 1580 app. If you go to KBLA1580.com, that's the website for the radio station. You'll see all the shows throughout the week, including my show on the weekend and other weekend shows. And on that page is a place to download our KBLA Talk 1580 app. And also you could go to your Play Store, your Google or Apple Play stores, and look up KBLA 1580 and download our app. And you can listen anytime, anywhere on the go.
Awesome. And your book, how do we get a copy of your book?
My book, you can purchase at Amazon.com and also other online book retailers such as BarnesandNobles.com, booksoup.com, etc. But and then you can follow me and learn more about my show, my book, where to purchase it, and just, other things that I'm doing in the legal community and my work as a mediator at angelareddock-wright.com. That's Angela Reddock-Wright, WRIGHT.com. And then you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at I am Angela Reddock-Wright. And I would love for you to follow so I can get to know you better.
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you so much for taking time to come chat with me and share this information with us. There's a lot of conflict going on in the world in general. And this is something that people really need to learn how to, in a healthy way, deal with conflict in their work life and personal life. So yeah, I thank you for everything that you're doing in this space. And also, again, congratulations on everything. And I wish you nothing but the best. Blessings to you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. Happy to come back at any time. And I just applaud you as well for having such a great podcast and focusing on issues that matter. And just having the courage to step forward and put your voice out there in the voices of others. I know, doing a radio show every week, I know it's no easy feat to run a podcast and get the guest book to, plan for the shows. So I know what it takes to produce something at this level. And so I equally applaud you, and especially applaud you for talking about healing. We all, whether it's work, personal lives, we all have our process of things that we need to be healed from. So I appreciate you for having these conversations that matter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And a shout out to our friend Nikki, who introduced us in a grocery store.
Yes, Nikki.
and created this opportunity and helped to make this opportunity possible.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. She's
she's a supporter, great supporter of all her friends.
Yeah, very supportive. Love her.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Well, thank you. And thank you to your listeners. I really appreciate y'all for tuning in, and hopefully said something today that's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. And to the listeners, thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in. It really does mean a lot, and I appreciate you tuning in to not just this episode, but each and every episode. And I hope that you get something from it. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to share it, like, comment. You owe it to yourself to heal and grow on purpose. Until next time, be blessed.
Thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk About Healing with Yvonne Pierre. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share.